Senator Toomey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Blum, for being with us today. I want to kind of step back for a minute, if we could. We've talked a little bit around the edges about some of the manifestations of the problems that arise from the payment schedules that we developed, right? Senator Isaacson mentioned doctors who are refusing to participate in Medicare in some cases. We know there's overutilization of certain services. You mentioned in your testimony at some length, you talk about the aggressive efforts that you have taken and continue to take to evaluate misvalued payment codes. And I understand all that. I guess my question is, to what extent do you believe that we're guaranteed to get these payment codes wrong? Probably all the time, because we have a committee that decides what a price should be for something, right? I mean, when I'm reminded of just how complicated this process is, coming up with 7,000 different RVUs, which assign a number for a work component, then a number for a practice expense, and then a different number for liability insurance, all of which is then adjusted by the GPCI, right? You have this incredibly complicated formula by which we try to establish a price. And isn't everything we've ever learned in economics that committees can't figure out prices? Markets tell us what prices ought to be. So I guess my question is, do you agree that there might be a better way to go about this in a very fundamental way, which would be to find a way to use price discovery as in a competitive setting to determine what we ought to pay, rather than having admittedly very smart people spending an awful lot of time doing calculations? I mean, I just don't think that the smartest people in the world can figure out what my car is worth by a formula. But it's really easy to figure it out when you go to try to sell it. Isn't this one of the fundamental problems we have in trying to establish fee schedules?
I agree with you that the challenge with fee schedules is that when they are set in one given year, but then kind of updated over time, that they don't always reflect the changes in market dynamics, changes in efficiencies, how that service is delivered. And so we always have to be vigilant to review those fee schedules and readjust them to make sure they reflect market realities. I know it's controversial, but that's why we felt it was so important to move forward with durable medical competitive bidding, because the fee schedules were set back in 1980s and really haven't been updated for that market reality. The same is true for laboratory services. And so we have some thoughts in our proposed rule that came out this week to change that fee schedule to be based upon a dynamic. So there are areas where we can use those competitive principles, those market reality principles. We have to operate within the law, obviously, but we agree with you that there are more opportunities for to use those principles.
And on the hospital side, of course, we have 4 different models of bundled payments. Do you think that using a bundled payment approach, of course, you could choose to have a committee decide what the bundled payment should be, or do you think that that might lend itself somewhat more readily introduce market pricing for services?
I think the bundled payment model is still a demonstration, and so it's still in its early phases, and so we will hopefully learn tremendous information. And one of the principles that we've followed with the 4 models, the hospitals can come forward to choose their services and to offer a discount on the current total payments. So we are hopeful that these pilots will lead to better coordinated payment policy, but they're still an experiment.
And then just very quickly, in the last question, you mentioned that you do believe, if I understood you correctly, that you do believe that CMS could do more to use market-based price signals to establish payments. Any specific reforms that we ought to look at on the physician side in particular?
That's a question that I have to think through and get back to you. But I do believe that we can learn from the experiences of the Part D system, the durable medical supplies, to achieve more competitive principles to our payment system.
Thank you. Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator. Mr. Blum, what about rural